when we look at the defensive side, or excuse me, when we look at the offensive side of the ball for SMU, this is where it gets much more interesting, I would say. The the overall feel on this offense in fall camp is it's hard to grasp because they are having to battle against a defense that continuously puts pressure on Preston Stone, that continuously makes it difficult for them to even kind of assess things from time to time, just with the amount of talent on defense and how it stresses this offense in practice. When we get our limited viewing portion of practice, it's an adventure for this team to try and play against this talented defense, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube. And so how we have to try and interpret things is, okay, SMU has a really talented defense. They have the ability to impact the game start to finish. They really do. When they're on their game, they're going to have good days out there on defense. With SMU's offense, it's a little bit of a work in progress from the standpoint of the offensive line is finding its groove. There's no question about that. When you look at that group, they have talent. They have size, athleticism. It's a much more athletic group than I think it gets credit for, without a doubt. When you're talking about adding guys like Savion Byrd and PJ Williams on the edge versus Hiron White and Marcus Bryant last year. And then, oh, by the way, they brought in Andrew Chamblee, an all SEC freshman, to play right tackle. You see him there on the edge there next to Ja'Kai Clark. You have Justin Osborne in the middle, super athletic, got great length. He was given a day off of practice on Wednesday as we were out there. He needed it. They don't need to find out necessarily what life is like without Justin Osborne out there on the offensive line. But with this group, they do feel like they have depth. The interesting thing is, and I think over the course of the summer, and spring as well, when looking at the portal, there was a want to grab another solid offensive tackle. And it didn't necessarily happen. They got Andrew Chamblee late, which is a 3-for-3 play, awesome addition. Even if he was pricey in terms of the market, so to speak, this is a group that if Andrew Chamblee is not ready to go for the season at some point, they have PJ Williams and Savion Byrd. You would have loved one more just from a pure, stocking the cupboard mindset of it's not enough. You just want more talent on the offensive line. And I do feel like they have the interior depth to really be strong this year and hold up against some of the challenges that the ACC is going to throw their way. I mean, I was at ACC Media Days. Florida State doesn't have small people. They have some huge dudes there in the middle of that defense, and they really are going to give SMU's offensive line everything they can handle when they come in. Joshua Farmer is a massive human being at 6'3", 318, and he is a big, strong dude there in the middle for that Florida State defense, and he had 7 tackles for loss, 5 sacks last year. He's going to be a problem for SMU's offensive line, even if Justin Osborne's there, Logan Parr is back healthy, Ja'Kai Clark's at right guard. He's played against some of these FSU guys before. They have that interior talent, though, to be very strong in the middle. And I think relative to watching SMU's defensive line against SMU's offensive line, knowing how talented that defensive line is for SMU and the depth that not only the first string for SMU has to face, but the second string and the third string, that it's going to only help them. And it's cliche, but iron sharpens iron. And that's what SMU has every day against this defensive line. And if you're looking for early bold predictions, I think the defensive line for SMU is so good, in particular along the interior, that the inside run game, once the lights come on this fall, is actually something that I'm kind of excited to see, because they just have had to face these big, strong guys in the middle, and it's not just one the ones or the twos. It goes all the way to the threes of guys that can move around and be athletic. So I like what SMU has along the interior of the offensive line. I think that the tackle situation, PJ Williams, I think sometimes things get blown out of proportion in a way on Twitter. Well, this spring, you look back on the spring he had and some of the clips that were out there here and there. I mean, he just got some grief, and right or wrong, that's how it went for him. And he was growing into the tackle he is today. And I think he's had a terrific offseason. I was talking with a couple of sources. They're just thrilled with the development of PJ Williams. And they really feel like he's going to be a big reason why either Preston Stone or Kevin Jennings is upright and standing up throughout the season. And then the right tackle spot is Andrew Chamblee has that pretty well held down. Savion Byrd is there backing him up. That's another athletic guy who's finding his way, I think, on the tackle side of things. Garen Justice does a good job of, I think tinkering is the best word. And he even joked, during the spring that was what he was doing on purpose to have people kind of be guessing what they were going to do. And I think that's important to know when it comes to kind of watching the offensive line in fall camp. But I will say this. They have a lot of different options. And with Logan Parr still recovering from his shoulder surgery, they've had guys like Nate Anderson into the mix. They've had guys like Kayshawn Sapp come in and provide depth. They have Ja'Kai Clark at right guard. Alex Woods is playing at right guard as well. They have different options that really fit well for this offensive line. And I just think it's going to be really interesting to see how SMU ultimately settles on things when it comes to the overall just offensive line. Because at some point they're going to have to navigate some adversity with that group. It's just a position that doesn't necessarily stay healthy. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that group and see what else Garen Justice comes up with and gives his guys on their plates before they're thrust into action week 0 against Nevada. If on the defensive side of the ball, the cornerbacks are the show me group this year, I am of the opinion that the offensive line is kind of that world on the offensive side. We can talk about receivers needing to step up, but I think they would like to have a dude emerge, and it didn't happen last year. I think this year maybe it comes around. I trust the running backs enough if they're healthy to be productive and to make some plays, but you've also got to have your offensive line a part of that. And it's just a group that SMU said, okay, Branson Hickman, okay, Marcus Bryant, we're not going to necessarily come to the table and hit you with a huge NIL deal and keep you. And that's a gamble. Branson Hickman started a lot of games for SMU, and he was very good. Outperformed his recruiting ranking, which I advocated for it to be higher. Wrestling background, coach's son, super smart. I like centers that are lower to the ground and have leverage. Marcus Bryant definitely outperformed his ranking. If he was going to put on the weight, he had the athleticism to be great, and he had a chance at SMU to go down as one of the best linemen in history if he would have stayed this year. They said, you know what? We like what we have in PJ Williams a lot. We think we can make Ja'Kai Clark or Justin Osborne work at center and go out and get different guys and add them into the fold. And that's a gamble. But it's a calculated one in the sense that Justin Osborne has shown he can do whatever he wants. I mean, he at this point could run for president, and I would be like, well, he might have a shot because he's played all over the offensive line. He wears so many hats and wears them very, very well. So with him moving to center and leading that unit, they, without a doubt, upgraded the athleticism. he's been one of SMU's most reliable players over the last few years. And now that he appears to be pretty healthy, it's just a special time for him to see this final year come together the way it is for him. And not to mention, you have Ben Sparks, too, who I blanked on. That was who I was kind of trying to remember earlier. And he is factoring in nicely again after recovering from shoulder surgery. He's just a little bit ahead of Logan Parr in his recovery. So he's been back out there around Ja'Kai Clark and battling there at right guard. So they have different guys that they're kind of plugging in here. And Garen Justice has options. And I think that's worth noting. I think they're going to be able to find a way to pass protect well. I think the athleticism will help there without a doubt. And just some of the tweaks that they've made. The big question is staying healthy, and will we see an explosive run game to come together for SMU? And with that run game, SMU does have Brashard Smith as a newcomer. Derek McFall's been suited up for the first time this fall camp. He's now on campus. He wasn't here in the spring. He's a true freshman that has shown some really nice juice. He had a nice run if you were watching earlier in the podcast. Jalen Knighton, LJ Johnson, those are your two top backs. Brashard Smith is probably right there with Jalen Knighton, I would say. They're similar in terms of their explosiveness when healthy. And Kamar Wheaton's been sitting out some for practice and not really expecting him to be back just yet. So with that, you're looking at a chance for LJ Johnson to, number one, take this running back position and absolutely take it by the horns and own it. And he's got the best combination of size and power on the team. He's shown that through practice so far. And he can basically be out there all three downs. Now, SMU's not going to do that. That's just not their style. That's not their MO. They want to get Jalen Knighton out there and involve him in the pass game. They want to get Brashard Smith out there and involve him in the pass game. And talk about guys that are explosive. Brashard Smith is that, and he's got it in spades. So I like the running back group. It's another group that kind of has to show me, but there's just not many changes there. Even bringing in Brashard Smith, having a true freshman and Derek McFall, you don't have these massive changes. So by the way, as an aside, the freshman class for SMU, if you look at who they brought in, Tyler Aronson, Derek McFall, Randy Reese, King Large, Graham Uter, Brandon Booker, Zach Smith, Alex Rogers, Speedy Nettles, Jalen Moses at safety, they really did a nice job. Smaller class, they basically kind of stopped once they realized they were getting into the ACC. They flipped Brandon Booker late. They got Derek McFall. They were able to kind of hit on a couple guys late, but it's a smaller class, and they're all guys that they got a chance. And, I mean, there's some really special players out there that are going to be good for SMU for a long time. King Large and Graham Uter are both looking the part early on the offensive line. Tyler Aronson, I think, looks a little bit more comfortable than he did in the spring and has stepped up. But Derek McFall on the offensive side, he's going to be something now. And if another running back goes down, he's going to be pressed into action, and he's going to have an opportunity, along with Zane Miners, former walk-on, to make some noise this year for the Mustangs. So I think as you look at the passing game, I think the wide receiver group has really taken a lot of things personally. Romello Brinson had a terrific summer. I was talking with a source, considered one of the best route runners on the team now. I don't know if last year we could have said that as much, especially the outside guys. Roger Daniels, Jake Bailey look really solid in the slot. They have certainly seen an elevation in Keyshawn Smith and Jordan Hudson's game as well. But if you get a freaky, bouncy athlete like Romello Brinson to be that dude for you, things are looking up in the passing game. And you have RJ Maryland, the star tight end. You have Matthew Hibner, the Michigan transfer, who looks like he's really hit. You saw his one-handed catch if you were watching on YouTube earlier to kick off the one-on-one tape. I'll play it again here because it was just so good. But he's really outperformed expectations for SMU so far since arriving from Michigan. He brings a national championship pedigree. And I mean, they have weapons. They have them. It is, will there be a little bit more of a dialed in rotation in terms of if one or two guys emerge, are they going to ride those guys like we've seen in the past at SMU with a bona fide 1,000-yard receiver, with a bona fide, 10 plus touchdown guy, or is it going to be by committee again? And that's an interesting question for Rhett Lashley and his staff to probably have to tackle there, because they do have a lot of good options that they can certainly get themselves through the season with. But you'd like to see somebody emerge as like a 1,200, 12 touchdown type of player. And I'm sure you can grab Romello Brinson at a pretty good price, so to speak, if you dabble in those sorts of preseason lines. I don't know where you could find it, but Romello Brinson would be a good pick to maybe emerge as a potential household name for SMU fans. With SMU football, there's always a buzz around the quarterback position. SMU's had some really impressive signal callers come through here, especially in the last really 2 decades. And this is probably the most intriguing year that I've covered, because you go through a lot of the quarterback situations that I've covered at SMU, and Garrett Gilbert was there when I was in school, and you have your Ben Hicks time, and the Will Brown moments, and the DJ Gillens, and all sorts of different guys that have tried their hand. Rafe Peavy, and Matt Davis, and obviously we've gone through Shane Buechele, friend of the show. That wasn't much of a competition when Shane came in here. There is a duo on campus that is going to be pretty good for SMU, and has led them to a championship, and that's Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. They're in a competition. And I'm not sitting here writing stories like, what's the latest on the quarterback battle, who's going to start, and trying to grab attention and subscriptions with that. But what I can tell you is they're in a competition, and they really show each day at various moments why one should be the starter over the other. And that's what happens when you get experience, you get exposure to their styles of play, you get all of those things. And for me, watching them run through practice, they're two really talented quarterbacks with two very different styles, but only one could play. And that's the quarterback position for you. And I still believe that Preston Stone is going to start game 1 against Nevada. And he deserves that, in my opinion. Now, Rhett Lashley and his staff see everything. They get every angle. They see every snap of practice. We have not gotten that at this point. What I can say, too, about Kevin Jennings is he put an incredible amount of work in to readying himself to be the guy this year. Now, he still makes mistakes, like throwing into coverage and doing some of those things that Preston did before he got experience. And he really dialed that back in the back half of last season. And Preston Stone went from, I think he had a turnover in just about every game. I think he had at least one turnover in every game, I want to say through the first 6, maybe even 7. And dialed that back late in the season. It really changed everything for this offense. And maybe Kevin Jennings can do that if he got more experience.